for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day to join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, and welcome back high school football. Now, I know we had a few games around the state last night, but tonight officially begins the high school football season in South Carolina. It is week 0, and there are a lot of games around the state of South Carolina tonight, and we look forward to bringing those scores to you later tonight here on South Carolina Radio Network on our high school football scoreboards at 10 o'clock, 10:30, and 11 o'clock. More scores in 5 minutes than you'll get in 2 hours elsewhere. So make sure you tune in for that. David Shelton will join us here in a little bit to talk about tonight's top high school football games around the state, and he will contribute to our scoreboard as well. Back in the studios after being on the road all week for the Palmetto Pigskin Tour and the Citadel Golf outing yesterday down in Mount Pleasant at Patriots Point. Again, thanks to Rod Mosley for having us down for the 20th annual Brigadier Foundation Kickoff Classic with the Citadel. Had a terrific time there. Will Pelagic, Professor Tom Hayes, Phil Kornblut, all together in our beautiful, plush, luxurious Learfield Studios on Main Street in downtown Columbia. I am excited. I am fired up. I am geared up. I am jacked up.
You look like it.
I am hepped up about football.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you had a sugar rush.
I did. It's got a lot of caramel in the old coffee tonight. So I am feeling it. You listen, I got a long night. Brian's got a long night as we wait for the high school scores to roll in later on tonight. Cam Smith's going to announce his commitments later on tonight after Westwood plays its game. Now, he did tell the state newspaper earlier in the week if their team loses, he might not announce tonight. He might not be in the mood to do so.
Yeah,
but
he said he's got like a shirt underneath his shoulder pads, and once he takes off the shoulder pads, you'll know which one it is. So
exactly. USC, Georgia, Tennessee, the final 3. USC did have a target come off the board this morning as Jalen McCullough, safety out of Powder Springs, Georgia, committed to Tennessee. And while we're talking about this, we've got some breaking news this afternoon that we have confirmed, and that is Jawan Gary, standout basketball player, 6'6", big guard, been playing at Gray Collegiate last year, helped lead them to a state championship. He's a Columbia native. He is transferring to West Charlotte to play his senior year. He tells us that his AAU coach, who is from Charlotte, the team he played for in AAU basketball, hails from that area and that organization, and he feels like he needs to go there to be closer to him, work with that organization to help him get ready for the SEC in Alabama next year.
Well, this is just a good thing for you, Corn, because that means it's one less South Carolina native that South Carolina didn't recruit. I'm just kidding.
See, here it is. It's a happy Friday, and you just have to pour salt right down our throats.
I'm not pouring it down your throats.
See, here's the difference between you and I, Will.
What's that?
What you just said, I was thinking.
Well, that's scary. You should be very concerned about your mental state.
I'm just saying, man. You seem very much bent out of shape about this whole in-state South Carolina recruiting thing. And
well, you should be if you cover the Gamecocks, or if you are a Gamecock fan, you should be bent out.
Well, if you're South Carolina or Clemson, I would just ask the question for the fans who would think that, okay, why is it that in every other sport we have kids say we love to come to Clemson or South Carolina? In basketball, men's basketball is the only one. Has anybody thought about that?
You have an answer?
No. Why is that?
I mean, I honestly think, again, it goes back to what we were talking last night. I think somehow or some way the well is poisoned, or just looking across the border from where we sit here in South Carolina, you have 2 blue blood programs that are sitting right there in Duke and North Carolina. You've got, especially with the case of the Josiah James situation, a family connection to another blue blood in Michigan State. These gentlemen have a singular mind They want to get to the league. They don't have a desire to play at a school 2, 3, 4 years. They want to get to the league, and they think their best way to getting to the league is through those blue bloods. You might disagree and say that you can make it happen.
Totally.
But I'm just saying that's what they want.
Come on. There's 400 NBA players. Do they all come from blue blood programs? They come from all different levels. If you've got the talent, you're going to be noticed, you're going to be seen, and you'll get drafted or you'll go as a free agent. You can get to there.
I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying you can't.
And does it enhance your chances to make the NBA if you play at North Carolina and you're not any good?
I'm not
or
saying
if you play at South Carolina or Clemson and you're not any good.
I'm not saying that is not true. I'm saying
that's what they think.
What he said. I think but they have been conditioned to think that way.
Well, they're being sold a bill of goods with that line,
which is why I don't necessarily blame Frank Martin or Brad Brownell in this case. I think it's something systemically wrong with the system. Pardon me using the same word twice there, but I think there's something wrong with the way that these players come out. I know. I'm saying I think there's something wrong with the way this is sold to these kids.
Listen, none of us are involved in the day-to-day activities of their recruiting. None of us are involved in their processes when it comes to deciding who they want and how they go after them. Okay. But history has proven when it comes to South Carolina basketball, their best teams over the decades have been made up of South Carolina players. Whether it's a matter of them coming together as a unit and feeling some state pride, and that helps them play better, or they were just good players at that time, whatever the case may be. Relying on outside of the state talent at South Carolina has proven not to be a recipe for winning.
Except for Frank McGuire.
Yeah, I'm talking about here at, when most of our listeners have been alive.
Oh, okay.
At least I hope. And also you got to look at the turnover in Martin's program. Huge turnover. And that's, mostly it's out-of-state guys. The in-state guys do tend to, I think, look at Justin Mackey. He could have left. He stayed. And it turned out well for him
because there have been kids in state that's transferred.
Well, I mean,
kid that went to Coastal, little guard.
Yeah, Shaw. Yeah, that's true. I'm not saying they all, but I think the majority. If South Carolina, if Martin wants them, they tend to stick. Now I do know also some of that turnover was due to malfeasance, on the part of some people.
I mean, here's my question. Are you mad? Are you barking up this tree if South Carolina had a better record than 17-16 a year ago? Because I don't think you are. I think this is based off of the fact that they had a year at a Final Four appearance where they were riding high, and that was completely not, whittled away, but it seemed like a lot of the goodwill that you had was undone by the fact that you come back and the year the cupboard was bare. And I'm saying, are we talking about this if they didn't have the kind of year that they had last year?
Well, Dozier leaving really hurt them.
Of course.
If Dozier stays, they've got a potential All-American player to lead that team and build around.
That's 4 games. He means 4 games to you.
Probably, if
games,
not more.
You're 21, and
I think it caught them a little bit with their pants down
20,
there.
21-12.
I think that they were expecting him to return, and he made the decision not to. And I think, I don't think it's worked out well for him at all to this point. He could have stayed, had a big junior year, and maybe been a first-round draft pick because they would have built their offense around him. There's no question about that.
You can tell that they weren't expecting that by the fact that they had to go out and get at the 11th hour 2 grad transfer guards.
Yeah,
and one of them from basically a secondary transfer situation with Frank Booker, and somebody who basically wasn't supposed to play the point guard position in Azani Gravett thrust into someplace playing out of position.
And of course, losing a spark plug off the bench in Felder.
Look, if you're signing in basketball, if you're signing players in July and August for that year's class, that's not a good sign. That's kind of a sign of desperation because your classes should be in place well in advance of the start of the season. The phone number, 800-956-7266. Are you excited about high school football? You're going to a game tonight. Let us know where you're heading. David Shelton will come up after the break to give us his take on the top games around the states. And we will take your phone calls, have recruiting, and a bunch more coming up here on Sports Talk on a Friday night.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
You want the first score of an in-progress game?
Yeah, what you got?
Hilton Head Prep 38, Northside Christian nothing at halftime.
Wow.
An early kick.
Anybody notice the Packers scored 50-something on the Steelers last night?
It's preseason.
And they needed to because
Gave up 30-something.
Yeah, but it's a preseason. They only played a It's just that
Sam-
Aaron Rodgers looked sharp early.
Sam Darnold looked like garbage. That's right, I said it.
Did y'all lose last night?
On a last-second field goal by Dustin Hopkins.
Oh, Dustin Hopkins, he of the big leg out of Florida State?
Yes.
That guy used to kick the ball forever. What a leg
That was
he had.
literally the worst I used to go to preseason games because living in D.C., that was the only games you could get into back in the day before the time of StubHub. And from that perspective, if I would have had tickets for that game, I would have wanted to leave.
Yeah.
That would have been terrible.
I've never forget the only preseason game I went to in Atlanta was against the Raiders. I was a young kid and I was a teenager. And these two guys were arguing up in the upper deck. And I was a recipient of a program on the top of the head because one of them dropped their program down, and we were sitting in the lower deck.
You're lucky.
Though what I would say, I think it would still bring in a lot of money and fans if it happened in college.
I was at Turner Field the night the guy fell out of the stands when the Yankees were playing there. Remember that?
Yeah.
And he got killed. And you know why he fell out of the stands? Well, he'd been drinking heavily, but he came down to boo A-Rod. A-Rod was coming to the plate, and he intentionally came rushing down the steps to boo him and fell over the railing into the players' wives section.
That's terrible.
They could have killed somebody falling into the wives section.
If you missed it last night in high school football, North Myrtle Beach beat Conway 16-14. Eau Claire gets a win over Louisville 44-18. Hannah Pamplico beat Lakeview 28-26. Robert E. Lee 21-7 over Heathwood Hall. Trinity Burns over Ben Lippen, 26-25. Much more to come tonight. Our high school school board shows at 10, 10:30, and 11, and we are joined by the man who knows all, tells all about high school football in South Carolina, the best in the business. We call him Bib, not Bob. David Shelton from the High School Sports Report and the Charleston Post and Courier. Happy football season to you.
Oh, yes, it's here. I'm so happy. I'm eating a large plate of cheesy bread at Familari, which is right next to Cane Bay High School, and I'm loving life right now, brother.
Is it really good? Because if it's really good, we'll come in here and check it out.
Say I need to.
Well, Will has to come. You talk about cheese, man. Whew.
You know me, I have to survey everything that's good.
Hey, man, watch that cholesterol reading now.
Dude, I've long past quit looking in that.
Well, before we get to tonight, a couple of surprising scores maybe from last night. North Myrtle beating Conway by 2. Hannah Pamplico beating Lakeview by 2. Are you surprised?
Well, Hannah Pamplico is pretty good. I mean that is an upset because it is Lakeview, but they're pretty good. But did you happen to see the video of the touchdown by North Myrtle Beach? The guy caught the ball clearly out of bounds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, clearly, both feet clearly out of bounds, and they called it a touchdown. So Conway may have gotten a little hose job there, but regardless, it won't matter in December anyway.
It starts already, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I had heard about it until I saw the clip. You know, because you see things on Twitter, you go, "Oh, he blew that," and you're like, "Yeah, whatever." And then when you see it, you're like, "Oh my, he blew that!" So it was not a touchdown. I can tell you that. Not at any level of football.
So we look at the games tonight. It's week 0. I mean, it's a lot of games, but it's not everybody. A lot of people are going to wait till next week to get started. So looking at some of the top games on the schedule, I kind of like the Greer at Burns game tonight. Northwestern at South Point, maybe because it's crosstown rival. Maybe Northwestern's gotten better. We know South Point's going to be. Will they be as good as they were last year? Do they have they replaced that talent they lost from last year?
I think they're going to end up being as good. I don't know that they'll be as dominant going through the course of the season, especially early. This is a good test for them. Northwestern's not what Northwestern has been the last few years, but like you said, it's a rivalry. But that Greer Burns game, if I had to pick a game of the night, I would think that was going to be it, because I think Greer is a legitimate 4A state title contender. I mean, they got South Point in the upstate, but this is a team that could win it all. And then, of course, Burns is Burns. So I think that'll be a great game. I think, Fort Dorchester is down in Brunswick, Georgia, playing Glen Academy. Somerville's hosting tomorrow night Cedar Grove out of Georgia, which has the number 1 receiver in the country. So there is some excitement. There are some good games, but like you said, most of them are kind of, it could end up a little bit on the one-sided.
What about that big matchup with Dutch Fork going up to Charlotte playing Mallard Creek?
Oh God, I totally forgot about that because I was eating his cheesy bread. But yeah, I think obviously that's going to catch a lot of attention because that's two of the better teams in the Southeast. I like Dutch Fork to go win that game. I mean, I think Dutch Fork's loaded.
Yeah.
They may stumble along the way, but if somebody don't get them early, I don't see anybody getting them.
Yeah, it's a Saturday game at Memorial Stadium in Charlotte. Should have a big crowd for that. I also like Strom Thurmond at Saluda, Williston Elko at Barnwell, Hemingway at Lamar. Anybody going to score in that game?
Whoa, that's a good one. I think Lamar with their running game is going to find a way to score. But Hemingway's got some players on defense. That Juju Williams, I got to see him last year. I'd heard about him, and there were some rainouts in the Low Country, so I went to Andrews to watch Hemingway play Andrews on a Friday night. And man, he is a football player. I think he's going to East Carolina. But Hemingway's got some athletes. That'll be a good one. And that Williston Barnwell game, although I think Barnwell's better, I think that'll end up being a pretty good game.
Since I continue to straddle the line between Whitmire and Bishop England, Whitmire plays Mid Carolina, Bishop England plays First Baptist. Your thoughts on both of those?
I'm sorry.
He's got cheese in his ears.
You got cheese in your ears? Whitmire and Mid Carolina and Bishop England and First Baptist, since they continue to straddle the line between those two, what are your thoughts on both those games?
You brought up those two games, really?
Yes, yes, I did.
He's still trying to learn.
I tell you, the Bishop England First Baptist game could be interesting. Bishop's got a lot of work to do. They got to replace a lot of guys, and First Baptist is, I guess the team that will try to contend with Hammond and Skeezer 3A. But Mikey Dukes will have a big game tonight. I think the Bishops are going to get better as they go, but man, I think they only had like 6 returning starters, and First Baptist is loaded with experience.
You mentioned Dukes. Been following his recruiting somewhat, and last time I talked to him, he was going to concentrate on football. Then he got a basketball offer, his first, and he started talking about he returned to his AAU basketball team, played some summer ball. Now he's talking about playing basketball again as well. You've seen him a lot. What do you think is going to happen with him recruiting wise? South Carolina and Clemson have been recruiting him. I mean, do you think he can play for them, and are they going to eventually move hard on him or go somewhere else?
That's a good question. I think South Carolina is in better shape. I don't know how in love he is with them. I think they're in the top 3. I think East Carolina and Virginia Tech are also major players for him. But I asked him about the basketball thing because he missed the first 2 days of football practice to play basketball. And I said, hey, are we opening up this door again? He's like, no, I was just playing with them. And he goes, I'm strictly football, and basketball is not going to be a factor. So I said, even maybe if you go somewhere and try to play both. He said, no, I'm a football guy. That's what I'm going to. He felt like his best future in terms of maybe down the road making money was in football, which I would agree. There are a lot of 5'10" shooting guards out there.
Yeah.
You excited to see Jackson Muschamp play tonight?
He's a pretty good football player from what I heard. I got to see a little video of him, and he's a good looking athlete. He's about 6'1", and I saw him play during the spring in lacrosse, and very physical player. I don't know that he's going to end up being a quarterback in college, but certainly like a safety type. He's got that mentality. Of course, he gets that from his dad.
The Birch kid over there too, and the Huntley kid. Well, that's a loaded team.
Yeah,
hey,
they got some players.
David, looking forward to it. Talk to you tonight. Enjoy your game, and we will see you later on.
Okay, man.
Thank you, David Shelton, High School Sports Report, Post and Courier. Back in a moment.
It is Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. You can call us 800-956-7266. Get us on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. There was a little bit of a Twitter storm last night after it seems like it's very rare we get a Twitter storm when we're all in agreement on something, because it seems like we all were in concert on this Ronald Acuna thing, but apparently we aren't in concert with the opinion at large. But sometimes it works out that way.
It's all right. Everybody can have an opinion. I hate that the guy got hit. Nobody wants to see somebody get hit or thrown at intentionally. But I still think that it's part of baseball, and you can't eliminate it. They're not going to eliminate it. All you can do is find the guy, suspend the guy. Is it fair? No. Does the guy who gets hit and suffers an injury and misses a couple of weeks and the pitcher is only out one start, is that fair? No, but it's just the way it is in baseball. I saw one of our guys tweeting back at us. Should the hitter go out with his bat and hit the pitcher upside the head?
Clark tweeted
is that
us.
Fair?
He said, you were listening earlier. You each were for Acuna getting hit. What are your thoughts?
Not for Acuna. That's totally wrong. Not for somebody getting hit.
There you go.
I mean, be accurate at least.
Nolan says, just listen to Phil Cornbluth for the first time, condoning Ronald getting hit is absolutely ridiculous.
Nobody is condoning it, idiots.
I mean, I don't want to speak for the group.
That is just idiotic.
I don't want to speak for the group, but I am for the old school rules of the game and just trying to, get somebody off his game, so to speak.
First of all, this is why I hate Twitter.
Right.
Because people will take what you say out of context, or they hear you say something. The key point is, and we were talking about this the day after it happened.
Right.
When I said that I'm a Braves fan. So I was thinking from the aspect of why hadn't somebody thrown at him yet?
Yes.
So he'll be mentally prepared to know to bail out when it happens.
Oh,
because in baseball, let me tell you, I'll tell some fans who maybe have not watched baseball for that long or have not been a fan as long as I've been, but I can tell you right now, if you ever have the privilege of going to Cooperstown to the Hall of Fame, a bunch of those pictures on that wall went after the guy's kitchen to say, this is my property, the inside corner of the plate, and you stay off it.
Jacob on Twitter says, if a baseball player can be thrown at just because he's on a home run streak, a batter should be able to hit a pitcher with a bat while he has a no-hitter going. Well, no, you just bunt. If you believe in policing yourself as a sport, then it really should be about it then. How many people turned off the Braves game when Acuna left? And people wonder why baseball ratings are getting worse. Promote your stars, don't injure them on purpose. Seems simple enough. Listen, this has nothing to do about promoting the sport. The sport biggest problem is not about promoting of the stars. It's about the fact that the availability of games, whether it's in your market or across, has become so vast that it's become a regionalized game. Yes. And that's the problem, is that so many people care about their own team and not the product at large.
Yeah.
The NFL and the NBA have figured out a way to nationalize their games. Major League Baseball has not done that yet.
Yeah, and there's a couple of rivalries out there they try to nationalize, of course, Yankees, Red Sox,
Cubs, Cardinals,
Dodgers, Giants, things of that nature. But, excellent point. They are qualifying right now at Bristol for tomorrow night's race. They're into round 3. Right now, Kyle Larson is on the pole, 127.792. We'll have the full Monty on NASCAR coming up in our second hour. We'll update the golf as well. George Bryan III with us in hour number 2. Recruiting coming up in a little bit as well. Let's hit the phones, 800-956-7266. Eric in Barnwell. You're up on Sports Talk. How are you on this Friday? Hello, Mr. Eric. Going once.
Eric.
Going twice.
Don't be a dude.
Let's move on.
All right.
Call back, 800-956-7266. Curtis in where?
Florence.
Curtis in Florence. Howdy. Welcome to Sports Talk.
What's up, Phil?
Hey.
I'm covering, I work for WBTW. I'm covering the Lamar Hemingway game. I think that game's starting at 8 o'clock. I'm assuming for heat reasons.
I would think so.
Yes.
It got pushed back. I'm also going to watch East Clarendon, where my son just graduated from. Will, I met you, I think, at the Elliott Sadler announcement.
Yes.
You didn't have any inside info, dude, on him retiring. I thought you guys were on the know, man. Come on.
I did not.
Yeah, I think that's a direct reaction to him meeting Will.
I told him that it was great having a Virginia boy involved. It's fun. It's fun. And you know what? It's a good thing. He's a great driver.
Yep.
He's a fantastic ambassador of the sport. But you can kind of tell after talking with him that the end was near. The end was near. For
What's
him.
his reasoning for retiring?
Same
more time with his family.
Yeah,
Mhm.
same thing. Everybody always is.
Yep.
Spend time with the family,
I mean,
health reasons, stuff like that.
And then once he spends a lot of time with his family, then he'll unretire and get back in the car.
He does some broadcasting too, I think. I think
He-
I've seen him in the booth
He
before.
said it's time for me as a dad
Yeah.
to help kids pursue their dreams. Wyatt is 8, Austin is 6. Both of them are very active at school and extracurricular activities. Want to spend more time with them, so it's fine.
Well, I think that you should actually whenever you get tired of Phil, you should actually go and try to take Elliot's spot. And you drive the race car a little bit and see if you can do that better than being the cohort there in Columbia. So, because sometimes you get tired of that hot city, because that city is just the hottest place on earth. Sometimes in the summer, it's just brutal to try to do anything outside of Columbia.
You
But
try to say I'm
anyway,
not
well,
good.
Phil-
You try to say I'm not good being part of this this trio, Curtis?
No, I'm thinking you're fine. You were working hard that day. I've never seen someone sweat as much as you did.
Yee.
It was a hot day out there. I mean, and you asked all the right questions. I mean, even when I tried to back out my camera, you kept asking questions. So I just held the mic there waiting for you to finish. I mean, you asked a lot. So that helped me out because you actually gave me a soundbite that I think we used instead of using the one that I asked. So good job there. So you do ask very good questions.
I appreciate it.
All right, well, you guys have fun, and I'm thinking that
This from a guy who doesn't know the difference between a lug nut and a carburetor.
That's not true. That's not true. Come on.
well, that's me too. I think Hemingway beat Lamar tonight. Just let you know. I'll catch you later.
Low scoring? Low scoring?
Probably 3-0. 3-0.
3-0. Somebody's going to kick a field goal. Okay.
Somebody,
I'll pay to see
somebody
that.
must go back the bat out of the batter's box.
You talk about how hot it is in Columbia. Being on that asphalt at Darlington Raceway earlier this week.
Oh my gosh.
That is not. That's not cool. In fact, the governor had the best line. He said, people, I usually enjoy my steak medium rare. Well, you guys all look like you're well done. That's my Henry McMaster impersonation. It's probably not good.
800-956-7266 is our phone number. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com, on Twitter at sportstalksc. Want to mention that we've got the high school scoreboards coming up tonight, and we invite you to locate that here on South Carolina Radio Network on our stations around the state who are signed on to carry the scoreboards. Those would include right here in Columbia, 100.7 FM, The Point Radio in Darlington, Florence, 96.3 FM, 1230 AM, WOLH in Greenwood, WCZZ, AM 1090 in Johnston. Big power stick there, 92.7 WKSX. In King Street, WKDK, AM 1310. In Newberry, WKDK, AM 1240. In Orangeburg, WGFG, Froggy FM 105.3. In Sumter, WIBZ FM 95.5 FM. You'll also be able to find the scoreboards as we do them via our Periscope on Twitter. So if you're not able to catch it over the radio, you can catch it on our Twitter feed and also here on our website, sportstalksc.com. So make sure you catch those scores tonight.
Now, the defensive back, you mentioned Cameron Smith, is it?
Yes, sir.
Is committing after the football game?
Supposedly.
Okay. Well, see, now that both teams are in the locker room and getting ready, or they're just on the field playing, I can say this. I just wanted to make sure that none of the players could hear this, but I never would have said I had the school I was going to the T-shirt under my pads, because there may be a pile up tonight and somebody pulls those pads off. Oh, I see who it is. Just like you saw the old wrestling matches on TV where the guy goes for the mask, they're going to be going for the pads.
You're saying there you should bring your telephoto lens possibly.
Or one of the opponents, down in the pile, if they pull it up and he gets a look at it, he can come out of the pile. And let's say he picks the Gamecocks, then he can do the little cocky symbol. He can turn to the fans and do the cocky symbol. Or if it's Georgia, what's the symbol for Georgia? Oh, puke. He can throw up to represent Georgia. And then for Tennessee,
well, you just marry your sister.
He can kick out, throw his dentures out and show no teeth.
No.
Wow.
And that would represent Tennessee.
That's fine.
That's how he'd get that message back to the
very
fans.
Fine.
Yeah.
It's all very fine. We'll continue on Sports Talk with recruiting next. We did also want to clarify some things about one of South Carolina's newest transfers and possibly some reasoning behind where they might play him and whether or not he actually might be eligible to play this upcoming season. Next on Sports Talk.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
800-956-7266. This is why you can't carry on conversations into the bumper music, because then you make me laugh. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
It's easy to make you laugh.
It is easy to make me laugh. We did want to clarify something, because people were talking about this on our feed earlier today at Sports Talk SC. We were talking about basically where South Carolina's safety situation is. That's become a very point of contention. The injury to Tavin Jackson, Jemias Williams. Apparently, that experiment hasn't necessarily gone well at safety. They've moved Nick Harvey over, and some were saying that the transfer from Southern Cal, Jamel Cook, out of Miami Central High School, could be an option at safety. And from everything that we have talked about, and we've talked to not just Travaris Robinson, but Kyle Krantz, who coaches the safeties as well, and also the nickelbacks, as well as the safeties and some of the other positions there, and also some of the players. People across the board have told us, including Will Muschamp, that Cook is repping exclusively at corner, not safety.
Mm-hmm.
And, despite the fact that he does have size, they're probably thinking that Harvey is going to be the guy opposite Montac, if that is something that they want to look at. But in my mind, Cook seems like the kind of guy who I'd want on the outside.
Well, Muschamp is shopping for bigger safeties.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have bigger corners. You have to have bigger corners today. As he noted in camp, the way to defeat the RPO is to have guys who can cover.
Especially man-to-man.
But they also have to be able to peel off and play the run. But they want the taller guys because they're facing taller receivers. Israel Mukwamu is the guy that's going to help them from that standpoint because of his size. Today, another transfer, let's see if you can find where, I can't remember where, but another transfer was approved for immediate eligibility by the NCAA. Mm-hmm. So it is time, people. It is time for them to rule on Belk and Cook and give them the go-ahead for South Carolina. And imagine if they do. Seriously, you're talking about two guys very highly recruited and rated, if you want to go by ratings. Imagine how that will help South Carolina's defense immediately.
The guy is Taysir Mack, transferred from Indiana to Pitt. So there you go.
Okay.
Pitt.
Yeah. Does it say why he was given immediate eligibility?
I knew you were going to ask that.
Just say family reasons.
Probably family reasons. I'm going to find out where he's from.
The other thing about the big corners is you got to remember that one of the ideas of a defensive back, especially a corner, is to disrupt the timing of the quarterback, which is one of the key points of the RPO. With those longer arms, as soon as that ball is snapped, they extend them and they can lock on the receiver and steer him the wrong direction real quickly with those long arms.
Peeling back more on Mack, he is from New York City.
New York City?
No, not
is that where they make that?
Not the other salsa.
Oh,
no,
okay.
Not the other salsa. Paces in San Antonio, sir. Max, 6'2", 195-pound New York City native. He was not expected to be eligible for game action this year because he spent 2 seasons with the Hoosiers and did not graduate. But Pat Narduzzi and company managed to get Mack a waiver from the NCAA. He would not only miss this season, his redshirt sophomore campaign, but also lose a year of his college football career. So because of the fact that he had already previously redshirted, went into that, but which that could help Cook. See, I think Cook has a better case than Belk does.
Yeah.
And honestly, if I'm South Carolina, I want Cook more than I want Belk.
They need both. They need help on defensive line. Muschamp has said they've got to develop some depth. They need extra bulk in there.
I just don't know if he's ready.
They'll get him ready.
They'll get him ready.
If he gives them
Belk
10 snaps a game.
I don't know if they can play him week 1.
No, they probably won't. And they won't need him week 1, I don't think. But here's the deal. Guy gives you 10 or 15 snaps. That means your starters are that much fresher in the fourth quarter.
At the Bristol, the qualifying is over. Kyle Larson has won the poll, his first at Bristol, 127.792. Chase Elliott second, Kyle Busch third, Paul Menard fourth, William Byron fifth. And by the way, if you haven't noticed, they have moved up the start time tomorrow night to 6:30. Weather is coming through the Bristol area, so they want to get that in before it happens. Let me give you the recruiting report for tonight, and then we'll get back to your phone calls. 800-956-7266. Cam Smith, corner of Westwood, plans to announce his commitment tonight following his team's season opener, though he did tell the State earlier this week a loss could cause a delay in that announcement. My guess is he'll follow through. He has made his decision. He did that the last weekend in July from USC, Georgia, Tennessee, and he's already privately committed to one of those. Of course, he's a kid who did not draw heavy recruiting attention until he showed off in summer camps, and he picked up an offer from USC, he picked up an offer from Georgia, took an unofficial to Tennessee, and then he was invited to the Rivals 5-Star Challenge and to the opening, so he really saw his stock go up. Safety Jalen McCullough, Powder Springs, Georgia this morning, announced a commitment to Tennessee, chose the Vols over USC, Auburn, Alabama, with Gamecocks and Vols, the two recruiting him the hardest at the end. So with McCullough committed, two other safeties left on the Gamecocks board, J.R. Walker, Elizabeth City, North Carolina, Dedrick Holmes of Evans, Georgia. Walker is believed to be favoring NC State. Holmes is favoring USC. Cornerback Devin Bush, New Orleans, who had cut his list to Clemson, LSU, Tennessee, announced he's reopening his recruiting to other programs. He also holds a USC offer. In basketball, point guard Tommy Bruner of Gray Collegiate will take officials to UMass, College of Charleston, and Missouri States. He's also drawn interest from Wichita State and Oklahoma State. There you go with recruiting. Check back. We will have the announcement, if there is one, from Cam Smith for you tonight on our Twitter and on our website, SportsTalkSC.com. And don't forget the high school scoreboards tonight at 10, 10:30, and 11. Back to the phones we go, 800-956-7266. We go to Alex in Myrtle Beach. Hello, Alex. Welcome to Sports Talk.
Thank you. I say this is my second favorite time of year. First is Masters Week, and you start talking about high school football. And last night, actually, I do appreciate you going to all the different colleges. I'm a Gamecock fan, but listen to all the different smaller other colleges. I always enjoy hearing what they have to offer. And I want to start going. I'm taking sabbatical from work. I'm going to go to some like Presbyterian games. But I moved away from Charleston for a long time. Went to Michigan, and I came back to Charleston after like 20 years. And I remember going to Stratford Berkeley games. And it's something special. And I appreciate, I really like, it's just football without all the big money involved. And the other second quick thing is I was listening to the show last night, and then I listened to, after that, I rarely listen to the second broadcast at ESPN. I listened to it last night, and Sarah Spain was on, and they started talking about the Colin Kaepernick situation, and I haven't heard all about this thing with John Elway and the Broncos, and they're going to it. It's like a conspiracy theory, he was like, this happened to, Kaepernick again. And then I went inside, did some stuff. I came back 45 minutes later, like 10 till 8, I guess. No, yeah, 8 or 9, whatever. And you're still talking about it. And she says, Sarah Spain says, well, basically, football is acquiescing to bigotry. People are denying NFL players their rights and everything. But I'm not going to make any judgments. I lived in California for 4 years, big Rams fan. But I kind of started watching the 49ers, and I remember when Dwight Clark made that catch. I became kind of a 49ers fan. I'm a Gamecock fan, and I kind of always followed them. When they won the Super Bowl with Kaepernick, I was a 49ers fan. I was and a Kaepernick fan. But after that happened, before he started taking me, I was watching the game after that, and he was terrible.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for your phone call. Without going into the political stuff, Kaepernick did turn down contract option from the 49ers. He chose not to re-sign with them.
According to what he's saying about Elway, they offered him a contract that was part of the deposition in the collusion case.
No, it was a contract with a cut. They were not going to give him the same salary, and he declined that. So, is there collusion? Is there something going on with the owners to blackball him out? I mean, maybe there is, but there were opportunities for him to stay in the league and try and compete for a job, and he chose not to take those opportunities. So how do you factor that into everything that's going on?
We talk about the golf next with George Bryan III. How's Brant Snedeker following up his 59? We go birdies and bogeys next.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
We are back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a football Friday night. Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, Professor Tom Hayes. More time for your calls in a few minutes. 800-956-7266 is our phone number if you'd like to join us. Time now for birdies and bogeys around the great state of South Carolina. We are joined by George Bryan III. Okay, so Brandt Snedeker goes out yesterday and shoots 59. Why couldn't he go out today and shoot 59 again? He did shoot 67. What's so hard about backing up a 59 with a 59?
You know what? When you sit in your chair, it's really not, and I don't get it. Even though I did see the round of the day, Brian Gay shot 7 under par. I don't know why he didn't shoot 59 again. The game's so easy, Phil.
Yeah. Listen, when you shoot 59, and you're there, right?
I was there, and I talked to Wesley last night. We had dinner. I said, was it a 59 day? And his eyes bugged out, and he goes, absolutely not. But, it's just odd. This last tournament of the year seems to bring it out of people, and absolutely, he didn't see 59, and I didn't either. Golf course played extremely hard. You know what's so neat about this golf course? It was opened in 1926. It's not like it obviously is to some degree difficult when the PGA Tour cut is -3. Even though the lead is hanging out at 14 under, it's still pretty hard out there. But it's not full of forced carries and real deep bunkers. It's just a lot of fun. It's fun to look at. It's easy to watch, and they can play fast despite the fact they didn't really play all that fast today.
Mm-hmm. My interest is piqued by your last statement, George. What, pray tell, consists of a quote-unquote 59 day? Huh. What conditions are needed?
To shoot 59, well, first of all, pretty flat greens that are somewhat easy to putt. These greens are just the opposite. The greens are perfect. Now, even though I'm cannot think of the superintendent's name, he did a miraculous job getting the greens back in shape. They lost them earlier in the summer, but usually greens that are a little flatter than these would set up for these guys for shooting such scores. But one of the other things, short irons into the greens. There are scoreable holes out here. And so when these players get in the fairway first and they get a short iron to a wedge in their hand on pure greens like this, that's the combination. Obviously, I was watching the scoreboard, not edge yesterday, but it had to be fun. I did watch Brian Gay today shoot 7 under par. He could have shot 59 today. He missed several of them inside of 10 feet that could have easily gone inside of 5 feet, actually. So.
Well, he shoots a 59, so you just figure out that it was bogey-free, but he threw a bogey in there still and got the 59. George, when a guy is playing like that, and you look at him on the greens when he's putting, is a guy like that usually just makes a good decision quickly and goes ahead and goes for his putt, or does he stew over it for 2 years, like some of the other golfers we see, like Sergio?
Nah, you see these guys, the ones that are really good at putting, they make a pretty quick decision and go. The other thing about hitting the putts, they usually hit it pretty firm. And Sned's got even though I didn't watch, I'm familiar with his style. He likes to hit his putts firm. So no, they don't take much time. They look at it and go. Once they're over the button, they will stalk it a bit. They'll make a few circles around it, but when it's go time, they pull the trigger.
Let's update the leaderboard. Snedeker, 14 under after a 67. D.A. Points is 64. He's at 12. C.T. Pan, who's from Taipei, a 64. He's 11 under. That's top of the leaderboard. George, as far as our South Carolina guys, Jonathan Bird, he's 8 under. Scott Brown, he is 7 under. Sam Saunders is 4 under. Bill Haas is 3. William McGirt is 3. Russell Henley, 2. Tommy Gainey, not going to make the cut at +1. Doc Redmond, +2. Kyle Thompson, perhaps his last tournament, a pair of 72s, +4. Wesley Bryan, 77, +5. And Matt Atkins, a +5. They're headed home. Wesley opened with a 68, so had a 77 today. What changed for him?
He let it get away from him off the tee. So his tee ball wasn't cooperating, and that's about it. He hit it pretty big number on the last hole to make it seem a lot worse than it was. But I tell you what, you and I spoke a lot back in the day about a kid named Jonathan Bird. His eyes are wide. He is the picture of health. His game looks great, and I'm gonna be watching him this weekend. He's hungry. He's also outside being exempt for next year. Jay Bird plays great in the corner. And Phil, you and I and the pro were talking. Will, you're not old enough, but in the mid '90s, we were talking about Jonathan Bird, Lucas Glover, Charles Warren, and Kyle Thompson over and over. And but Jay Bird looks great. He looks fabulous. So I'll be pulling for him this weekend.
Well, right now, Scott Brown and Sam Saunders, William McGirt, Russell Henley, they are all in the FedEx playoffs as things stand today after this round. So they've got a chance to continue. And going back to I wanted to ask you about Kyle Thompson. We had him on earlier this week, and I know that you know him well. He tells us at age 39, this is likely his last professional golf event. Your thoughts about his career?
Oh, this young man has had a spectacular career. I'm really sad to hear that. I hadn't talked to him specifically about his decision there. And somebody like Kyle, you never can tell. Don't count him out. He's just absolutely a physical ball striking machine, and he's got a family, so he definitely wants to spend more time with his family. Not a bad decision, but I'll tell you what, he's been in pursuit for a lot of years. He never really had the success he wanted to at the PGA Tour level, but that doesn't mean he's not a great player. He is spectacular, and he's such a fun guy too.
Yeah. Speaking of the Gamecocks, George, I did want to make sure, just because I know you like to showcase the amateurs, what do you know about Ryan Stackler getting himself to the final 64 of the U.S. Amateur? Didn't make it past the match play portion, but a good showing for somebody from the state of South Carolina.
You know, I wasn't able to keep up with the USM, and I'm glad for Bill McDonald. And anytime we have our anybody from South Carolina making a good showing is wonderful. But I do not know anything. Hadn't seen him play yet. I do want to recognize a couple of players. You mentioned Russell Henley. He plays at the Country Club of Charleston quite a bit. Well, they hosted Beth Daniel Jr. Azalea, and congratulations to Brandon Master. He shot 8 under par in the last round to win the boys' side. On the girls was Molly Hardwick. Molly's a young girl, and apparently I'm not sure if she's an 8th or 9th grader. I think she might be a 9th grader upcoming. So congratulations to these two players. And then the Seabrook Island will host the SCJGA All-Stars this weekend, as will the Patriot over in Greenwood. If you want to go watch next year's Amateur and College Stars, go check out the SCJGA All-Stars, either in Charleston or in Greenwood. So there you go, man.
Okay, and football season's here, so you know what that means for you, just more room on those fairways on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm so glad you pointed that out. And anybody else listening, Saturday afternoon, the college boys just make the golf course available. So thanks so much to college football on Sunday. Then the pros take over. It makes George very happy.
Well, you enjoy yourself. We always enjoy having you with us. We'll talk to you next week.
See you later. See you, man. Hello.
George Bryan, the third birdies and bogeys here around the state of South Carolina.
We'll get back into some more football talk. We'll update our poll question, which surrounds the quarterback situation at Clemson.
And Brett McMurphy has struck again.
I was going to mention
Ohio
that.
State.
Very, very interesting
Tell you
headline.
about that. Mm-hmm.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
There's a lot of controversy afoot, as they say across the pond. We'll get to a lot of it, including the Clemson quarterback situation, the results of what happened at Maryland, and also a very disturbing story out of Ohio State. Your phone call is continuing also at 800-956-7266, but you had a local angle story to update.
Yeah, Reggie Anderson from News 19 in Columbia, out covering high school football, reports that the former Swansea head coach, Greg Wright, who recently was hired at Brooklyn Casey as co-defensive coordinator, that he no longer is at BC as co-defensive coordinator, and he says it's because that the Lexington 2 school board overruled the hire.
Interesting.
So he is not there for that game. So that saga continues.
Wonder why.
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes back to his original firing from Swansea after 2 seasons there. I guess it falls under the same jurisdiction, that school and at BC and Swansea as well. I also want to mention there's a photo out from News 19 on Twitter showing Williams-Brice Stadium, if you're on Twitter, the field fully covered by a tarp and other stuff going in for the concert.
Almost looks like a tile that they have covering it.
A story yesterday by Josh Kendall in the State said that it's possible they'll have to replace all the turf. They know some of it's going to die underneath that tarp, and because of the abuse it's going to take from the equipment and people walking all over the place, they've already purchased the turf that's going to replace the dead turf. It may take up the entire field. Now they say the reason this is going to be okay for the home opener, not too far away, is that the sod is very, very deep and very strong, and it will be able to come together very quickly and form a well, what's the word I'm for? Footing. The footing will be fine. My first thought was how much of that turf is going to kick up. New turf hasn't taken. They said this will be ready to go and ready to play on very quickly.
Yeah, the stuff is already grown. It's not necessarily something where they have to go in and have it grow into the sod. They have stuff that's already grown out in a farm elsewhere. Meanwhile, the turmoil continues at Ohio State. This is from Brett McMurphy, who is now with the Stadium outlet. The headline basically is salacious in its own right. Zach Smith, the fired coordinator at Ohio State, the one who possibly could get Urban Meyer also deposed, allegedly ordered sex toys to Ohio State offices, had sex with a staffer, and took nude photos at the White House, submitted for your approval of the Midnight Society. That does not seem good.
I hope Trump wasn't involved in those photos at the White House.
No collusion. No collusion.
Or Mrs. Trump.
There was a photo of Smith's junk taken on April the 20th, 2015, according to a timestamp. Shows him in his black suit he wore to a White House event. Another photo includes a White House bathroom towel featuring the seal of the President of the United States.
Didn't Alabama win the national championship? What is the guy from Ohio State doing in the White House?
He can go there as an American. That's America's house.
He also, again, it's
apparently some of the things he did in his house, he should have stayed.
Listen, you've never taken a towel from a hotel you stayed at? That's all he did. He was just taking a towel from the White House.
And there was a text exchange between McMurphy and Zach Smith's attorney.
Good. Yeah.
He basically says, the attorney does, sounds like extortion. I'd get a lawyer if I were you. He also accuses McMurphy of accessing these files illegally, basically the photo and the proof of purchase of the sex toys, and the fact that he also has the shipping label, I guess, that says his name. He actually had it under his name.
How did McMurphy get this?
He's a great reporter.
Yeah, I know that, but I mean, still, how do you acquire that stuff? You think Smith's wife provided him with that?
I have no idea.
Bet she did.
Does he have the list of authenticity for these toys?
Oh gosh, and it shows the items.
That's okay. Let's
order.
just cut it at that.
I'm just saying it's.
Yeah, we got you.
Let me just wait. You can't mistake them for anything else.
Okay,
is what I would say.
We get the idea. Move on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying it's not. It's just not good for Urban Meyer.
Did he make sure he divulged that he paid the sales tax on those items he ordered?
Meanwhile, at Maryland, the Board of Regents' special meeting today did not vote to fire DJ Durkin, their head coach. Of course, embroiled in the scandal involving the death of a 19-year-old football player, Jordan McNair. The board met for 4 hours in a closed session meeting regarding the investigations, and the only action that was taken was that the Board of Regents voted unanimously to assume authority and control over all aspects of the investigation into the death of McNair. They said that they would like to assume control over a commission formed to investigate the culture of the UMCP, University of Maryland College Park program. The actions will allow the University of Maryland system to provide guidance from the findings to the investigation to all system institutions. So basically, nothing yet on DJ Durkin.
It's still hanging out there as we edge ever closer to the start of the college football season. Don't know which way that one's going to move going forward. As far as Ohio State's concerned, I still believe Urban Meyer is getting canned there. The pressure continues to grow. More and more national columnists are calling for his firing. And if you don't fire him in your Ohio State with all this stuff continuing to come out, and you have to know that he knew what was going on. I don't think there's any way he can defend that as long as he's had this guy around him and on his staff. Unless your head is just buried so deeply in the sand and you refuse to acknowledge it. I think he's gone. Durkin, I don't know. Again, you got the situation with the death and how that was handled. How much of that is his responsibility? Yes, you're the head coach and you're responsible for everything in your program ultimately, but how much hands-on was he in dealing with that situation or not dealing with that situation as it should have been handled? Is it more his fault or those who were actually there and who knew that the guy was struggling and EMS should have been called sooner? There should have been a quicker response. Do you put that on the head coach who wasn't there, actually involved in the incident?
That's the thing. That's what basically, I hate to bring this comparison again up, but Missouri had a situation where they had a player die in summer workouts where the head coach is not permitted to be there. How can you hold the head coach liable? And I'm not necessarily advocating for DJ Durkin to stay, but if there's no precedent for a head coach being fired as a result of these workouts. They have let go of the strength and conditioning guy, and they've provided a settlement towards the family. I mean, I don't want to say that I don't know what more they can do, but I mean, I really don't know what more they can.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's very difficult because nowadays people want to extract a pound of flesh, no matter how they get it, even though they don't think about. We think about the kid that died, and that's a sad situation. As far as we know, it wasn't any hidden medical condition. It was heat stroke, which should not have happened. But as be it as it may, you have a 19-year-old kid. Does justice to some people equal destroying a man's career? I mean, I just asked the question.
I mean, the pound of flesh argument, it fails to kind of hold water. Now, the separate issue is the investigative story run by ESPN that not only goes into detail about the McNair situation, but also alleges other things. That's, I think, Corn, where he probably is in more trouble because of the fact that if some of those findings that were published in that story are found to be made truthful, then that's where I think you can get into a situation where he doesn't promote a healthy atmosphere around that program. Yeah.
There's still a lot of issues to be uncovered and decided upon there by the powers that be. It doesn't look real good for him right now either as this thing moves forward. So you're looking at a couple of Big Ten programs dealing with big distractions as their season comes up. You know how coaches are, man. They hate distractions this time of the year. They want to be focused on their team. They want their players focused. How can the players be focused when all this is circling around them?
You wonder, again, this was brought up separately, but you wonder if these issues will lead to more transparency forced on these programs.
Has to. I would hope so. I would hope that programs are already transparent and taking a lesson from these two cases that you better be transparent. Listen, I can understand closing the practices. I'm not talking about opening up the practices for fans and media to go in there and see. But if something happens and you're not violating HIPAA laws, I mean, you need to be forthcoming about these things.
We go racing next with Monty Dutton on NASCAR.
latest on this weekend's race is around the corner. The full Monty on NASCAR is next. This is Sports Talk.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a Friday. The gentleman of NASCAR at Bristol Motor Speedway this weekend. Of course, we welcome in Monty Dutton of MontyDutton.com for our weekly chat about NASCAR and the full Monty on NASCAR. Before I get to the observations from last week and obviously what you want to see this week, this is the last race before we get to see Darlington Raceway show up for the Bojangles Southern 500 and the Xfinity race and the like. And actually, I had my first visit to Darlington earlier this week, Monty, and they're doing a lot of stuff, as you know, about trying to refurbish everything and redo the seats. You know, I guess, what are your impressions about where Darlington sits in the NASCAR calendar and the impression that it has on the sport as a whole?
I think the Southern 500 is one of the premier events as it was long considered. Darlington, if we look back a decade, we would say that Darlington's future was very much imperiled. But I actually think that when they dropped back to one race and then they lost Labor Day for a while, people in Darlington were in danger of being out of the sport, and that's gone now because they've drawn good crowds. Darlington doesn't have seats someplace to do. But it's been, you know, I think that it's been a renaissance for Darlington, and I'm really happy to see that from the pride of a South Carolinian to someone who went there when I was a very small child. It occupies a special place, and I think its future right now, to the extent that anything is secure, that Darlington's future is secure. And it got Labor Day back because they sent it to other places and they didn't do that well, so they gave it back to Darlington, and that's where it should be.
What do you think the throwback weekend feel, that whole promotional convoy, how much of that do you think kind of helped rejuvenate also, in addition to returning to that Labor Day date?
My personal feeling is that the recovery was accomplished before that came along. I think it's wonderful. And I think Darlington is the track that is most associated with history. The only track on the circuit that is older than Darlington is Martinsville. But when Darlington was built, NASCAR didn't run on paved tracks. It was the first super speedway that was paved. There was a mile dirt track. But I mean, in some ways, the Southern 500 of 1950 was the most important event in NASCAR. It shaped the sport for everything that has happened since. And the 1969 opening of Daytona was the second phase of that. So, you know, the wonderful thing is that Darlington occupies a place in stock car racing similar to what Cooperstown, New York does for baseball, but they don't still play major league games in Cooperstown, New York.
Yeah, he when we talked to Kerry Tharp earlier this week out there, he called Darlington the Wrigley Field of NASCAR. How apt of the comparison do you think that is?
I think it's apt. I don't think Darlington is as charming as Wrigley Field or Fenway Park. I don't think it has the quaintness, but racetracks, for the most part, aren't quaint. Football stadiums aren't quaint. Baseball stadiums are charming, and Darlington is a trip back in time. It still is a place that reveres all that went on before, and so I think that the throwback paint color schemes are appropriate, but I think there are many other things that makes Darlington's place unique and secure.
We'll talk more about that when we get closer to that race. Of course, we're talking with Monty Dutton, the full Monty on NASCAR for this week. We had a Michigan race that kind of returned everything to the form that we'd been talking about, with basically three drivers who dominate things, with Kevin Harvick winning for the seventh time this past year, breaks the tie with third-place finisher Kyle Busch for most victories in the Cup Series. What were your impressions about what we saw in Michigan?
Oh, one of the things I often say is that, you know, if every race were a classic, there would be no classics.
Right.
I have seen many races at Michigan that were absolutely like that one, and they were back in the good old days when now people look back to it and say that, I thought that it wasn't a great race, but there have been some really good races lately. And, one guy, there's three guys who've been dominating the season. One was in an advantageous position and pulled away at the end. There were some other people that made promising. Martin Truex could have won the race, but he sort of didn't win it by default by his own mistakes. And so you're right. You can't say it returned the form of the season because it really is the form of the season. And so, we've got this point. It's almost playoff time. And there will be someone might emerge. Someone might, lightning might strike. Some teams, there are a lot of teams that are fast, but they just don't get their act together for a whole race. Last week I made the mistake for the umpteenth time of picking Denny Hamlin after I swore I'd never do it again. and I got burned because if the pattern of the season, Kyle Busch has won 7 times at Bristol, and all year long, it seems like every time one of those two drivers gets ahead, the other comes back and ties it. And so, there's a lot of competition in NASCAR. It's just between 3 guys.
And that's something that we've been talking about over the whole part of the season, whether that's good or not for the sport. Is that something that there's something that needs to break up the fray, or can NASCAR spin this and sell this as a kind of 3-headed fight to the finish?
I think they can, and I think that once upon a time that was the general, that before the chase and everything else, that was the general course of seasons. There weren't really all that many years when one driver ran far away from everyone else. I think that's just a natural development that happens from time to time. NASCAR this year is like the American League in baseball, where you have mega teams, you have the Red Sox and the Yankees in the East, and Houston in the West, and Cleveland not really as good, but the Central's so bad. And really everything is close to cut and dried. Well, everything is close to cut and dried in NASCAR this year. But it's not like that every year. And this is just the fact that over time, if you believe in the way that competition works, the overachievement of a small group causes everyone else to work doubly hard, and it takes care of itself. And I really... when you hear people, NASCAR has to do something about it. Oh, no. NASCAR has done quite enough. NASCAR needs to just let things be for once. They need to, at some point, they need to let the sport stand on its merits instead of dickering with everything. Every time there's a slight flaw that is detectable by a microscope. NASCAR has changed things at a dizzying rate, and they really need to let the system work, or at least give it a decent trial.
Of course, we sit here with about 40 seconds left, Monty. The half-mile track at Bristol, as you mentioned, is the site this week. Kyle Busch was a leader in practice. Chase Elliott also led the way as well in one of the practices. Who do you like this week?
Well, I like Kyle Busch for this reason. Every time Harvick pulls one ahead, he comes back and he's won 7 straight races. I would say that my interesting long shot is Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who has finished in the top 10 in 9 straight races with 3 of them top 5s. It's kind of like the only place other than a plate track where he's a factor. And then the guy that I wish I could pick, because I adore watching him race at Bristol, is Kyle Larson. And I love to watch him race, and I have developed a bias in his favor, but I'm also tired of picking him without results.
Appreciate the time always, Monty. We'll talk to you soon.
I appreciate you having me. Bye.
That is Monty Dutton, the full Monty on NASCAR. And again, there is no race next week, so we won't talk to Monty until the preceding portion of the Bojangles Southern 500, which again comes your way Labor Day weekend. Final segment of the show, final segment of the week coming up. We'll wrap things up on a Friday next on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, as we get ready to close up shop for the week. Again, a reminder, if you are of the high school football persuasion, be listening on many of these same South Carolina Radio Network affiliates for our high school scoreboard show. We'll have updates at 10, 10:30, and 11. Also at SportsTalkSC.com. We are brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. Whether it's low rates or high rewards, using select Founders credit cards on clothes, school supplies, a new computer, even college tuition, while prepare your kids for their first day of school. Apply online at FoundersFCU.com/visa.
All right, so we got the Panthers playing tonight, their second exhibition game. They are at home against the Dolphins tonight. They'll be getting underway here shortly.
That's a bad matchup.
And let's see, a couple of things to pass along. Missouri has lost a key player. Richard Floyd broke a bone in his right leg in practice. Receiver, going to miss 4 to 6 weeks, costing the first part of the season. USC women's basketball team have a nice treat coming up for them Thanksgiving. They'll be at the Vancouver Showcase. And the field will also include Notre Dame, which is a national champion, and East Tennessee States and Oregon States and Western Kentucky. USC will play East Tennessee Thanksgiving Day, and then will face either Oregon State or Western Kentucky the next day. Notre Dame's bracket includes Rutgers, Gonzaga, and Drake.
Yeah, the Rashad Floyd, just to get back to the one thing that you mentioned with that, Rashad Floyd is part of a very highly touted receiver group for Missouri, but the thing about him is that takes away not only a receiver, but also a punt returner. And on the USC front with that tournament, if they play Notre Dame, South Carolina is going to play every national champion, or half of the 14 teams who have won national championship titles for the women's basketball since 1982, and every tournament since 1994. So a loaded schedule when it comes to prestige for the Gamecocks.
Let's update some high school football scores. Cane Bay has taken a 7-0 lead on West Ashley. Of course, these are all first quarter. Burns and Greer, 7-6. Rebels on top of the Yellow Jackets. And we've got Andrew Jackson leading McBee by a 6-3 counts. Ashley Ridge has a 3-0 lead on Goose Creek. Berkeley leading Stall 14-0. We've also got Woodruff 7-0 on top of Chesney. Chapman leading Union County 12-7. I recommend, if you're looking for scores throughout the night, there is a website, and it's also an app called scorestream.com.
Yes.
And what they do is they get people who are at the games to update the scores on this particular app. And thus you can follow scores not only in South Carolina, but across the country. So good way to keep up with high school football scores until you get to our scoreboards.
The incomparable Three Dingo would like to clarify, since Zach Smith's White House visit occurred in 2015, that would not have occurred while Donald Trump was in the White House.
Good point. I don't think we mentioned when it occurred.
April of 2015 is when it said.
So that's cool. That's cool.
Good for you, boy.
Well, I guess keeps him out of that particular problem area, you know.
Speaking of a problem area, although not a problem area, a good problem to have for Clemson. They, of course, are still trying to figure out who will take the field first at Signal Caller going into the 2018 season when they open up against Furman 2 weeks from tomorrow. Of course, if you read between the tea leaves or read what Dabo Sweeney had to say, because we couldn't really see anything this week, but when you think about what he and the offensive coaches have had to say, this was probably Kelly Bryant's resilience, his kind of return to form. They said after his Thursday scrimmage that he had his best day of the fall. Trevor Lawrence did make some freshman mistakes. Chase Bryce continued to impress. And it seems like some of the sheen is coming off the new Camaro in the garage there at Clemson, Corn.
Yeah, he's played very well to this point in camp, almost to the point where if he doesn't have a meltdown in the next week or so, he's probably going to be the starting quarterback going into the season. And can't say that I thought that was going to be the case.
You didn't say that last year either, by the way.
This is true. This is true. I did not foresee Kelly Bryant being a really good quarterback going into last season. Now, we saw what he can do, but I got to admit, I read the stuff coming out of what people write up at Clemson who are there every day, and you couldn't help but feel that Trevor Lawrence was going to sashay right in and win that job. Almost, I look at Tiger Illustrated, I look at Tiger Nets, look at Clemson Insiders, and everybody up there was featuring Trevor Lawrence going into camp, kind of leading you to believe that he was going to emerge as the guy. But you give Kelly Bryant a lot of credit for, at this point in time, kind of fending that off and really seeing no reason that he won't hold on to that job that he took into the fall and emerge as a starter against Furman. And, I think the real litmus test will be the Texas A&M game out there, how well he plays in that situation, and whether or not he shows again that he can be the guy with the Tigers, or if he stumbles there and they put in Lawrence or they put in Chase Bryce, one of those takes the offense and does some big things.
We shouldn't be surprised, though. Doesn't it seem like the formula that we always see with a veteran as they get closer to kickoff, the concentration level picks up or whatever, while the young stud, oh, my goodness, we got to go through this again. And the body is not used to that yet. So we shouldn't be surprised that the veteran is showing his true colors now.
I do feel like Kelly Bryant will be the first one who comes out against Furman, and I also believe the same can be said for what happens against Texas A&M. But I do believe that, as Dabo Swinney said in multiple occasions, that the performance in games will certainly he'll take that into consideration with how they handle the position going forward. It's not as if the starting quarterback on September 1st is necessarily the starting quarterback on, say, September 29th against Syracuse, October 6th against Wake Forest. But what I will say is that you're probably going to see some predetermined situations, whether it's first series of the second quarter or something like that. But there will be some predetermined situations in my mind where they're going to let Trevor Lawrence handle the game while it's in the balance and see how he reacts.
They have to do that, because the one thing they want to see that Trevor Lawrence gives you is the threat of the big strike. And a lot of times Clemson would methodically move down the field because of that threat. They didn't have to use it, but because if you can strike quickly, that's all to the good for their defense. And the defense doesn't have to work harder to give the offense a shorter field, because you got a guy that can really air it out.
There's an updated story here on CBSSports.com on Ohio State, and apparently Ohio State's investigation into Meyer will be finished
by Sunday.
When it's finished, means it will be finished on Sunday, August 19th, specifying previous comments that he made on a radio station. Ohio State President Michael Drake said that the working group's investigation into Meyer's handling of the Smith case will be completed as planned. Investigators will then prepare a report for the Board of Trustees to be shared in executive session next week. Following deliberations, Drake will make his decision on what, if any, course of action should be taken.
So we'll find out next week.
Yeah. A couple of more scores coming in. Darlington on top of Sherraw, 14-7.
Good for Brian.
In the first quarter. And let's see, I don't think we had this one. Crestwood is leading West Florence by a 12-7 score. South Florence leading James Island 14-0. Reminder, we will be here tonight and every Friday night for the next, I want to do the 16 weeks,
something like that.
All total. You got some bye weeks in there. You got playoffs. We are here. A lot of scoreboard shows in our state, they say bye-bye at the end of the regular season. Not us. We are there until they raise those trophies, or the Friday night before. So at 10, 10:30, and 11. Now tomorrow, last opportunity to hear from the Gamecocks for a long time.
At least one of them will must-check. So
we'll have that covered for you
silence
on our website, SportsTalkSC, and on Twitter at SportsTalkSC.com. Will, have a great weekend.
You too.
Pro, same to you. Brian, I'll see you in about an hour and a half. Have a great night and a great weekend, everybody. Join us Monday on Sports Talk.
This is the High School Scoreboard. This is the High School Scoreboard with Sports Talk host Phil Kornblue. This is the High School Scoreboard with Sports Talk host Phil Kornblue.
Check one, check one, check one, check one, check one, check one. I mean, you can. So you would. Hold. Let me see something here. So let me see something here. Oh. 1 2 1 2 1 2, and this is computer 1, right?
This is the High School Scoreboard with Sports Talk host Phil Kornblut.
And welcome into the High School Scoreboard, everyone. Phil Kornblut from Columbia, joined by David Shelton on this Friday night. Let's get right to the scoreboard. Latta with a big win tonight, 97-3 over Dillon. And Latta, a big win tonight, 85-2 over Marion. And Latta, the big win tonight, 65-4 over Lakeview. Ha! Oops. Hand me that knob. Where'd that come from? Came right here. Stuck to my finger. All right, so let's go back now.
This is the High School Scoreboard with Sports Talk host Phil Kornblut.
And welcome into the High School Scoreboard, everyone. Phil Kornblut from Columbia, joined by David Shelton on this Friday night. Let's get right to the scoreboard. Latta with a big win tonight, 97-3 over Dillon. And Latta, a big win tonight, 85-2 over Marion. And Latta, the big win tonight, 65-4 over Lakeview.